Hi everybody, and welcome to Garden Style. So a lot of you have been sending me a lot of emails recently asking me about different ways on how to winterize your garden. Basically get it ready for the cold weather. And I don't know about you, but we have already seen our first frost here in Washington, and I live in Zone 8. So I thought I would cover a few steps that you folks can take to get your gardens ready for the winter. And the most obvious question that I've been asked a lot of is, do I clean everything up? And honestly, that's a personal decision, I think, for a lot of folks. For me, I don't go through and clean up all my gardens. I actually leave some of my perennials out, as well as my grasses. A lot of perennials, especially your late blooming perennials, like your coneflowers, rudbeckias, a lot of your grasses, will actually provide seeds for the birds later on, if they're not chewing on them already. So I kind of leave those types of perennials alone. However, I've got things like hostas. As you can see in this picture, they are more than ready to be cut back. So those are the types of things I do start to clean up. I'll go through and I'll clean up the obvious things that you can see are dying back and ready to go. And it just gets you that much further into next spring without you having a huge list of cleanup that you need to do. But a lot of us can start taking our cues from Mother Nature. Mother Nature pretty much tells us what it is we need to do in our gardens. And she just naturally sheds all her leaves during the fall in order to protect the more tender plants during the wintertime in the underside of the trees. So we can kind of take that as our clue as well. Your more tender plants, or plants that you know could suffer greatly if you have a severe winter, those are the types of things you want to start mulching, either with shredded leaves, pine straw. There's all sorts of different things that you can use, and start protecting them now. And that also helps against frost heave. And what that is there's so much moisture in the ground, especially here in the Northwest, that when it does get really cold, down to 28, 26 degrees at night, it will start to freeze over the surface of the garden. And if you don't have a lot of those areas covered and you leave the bare soil, that frost will actually cause that soil to start to heave, and your plants will come right up with it. So the mulch actually helps with that. So you're actually freezing that top inch of leaves or pine straw or whatever it is you can find. That's a natural type of blanket, so to speak, that will help protect the ground and also protect the roots of your plants. So to clean up or to not clean up, I get as much cleanup done as I possibly can. However, I am blessed with a lot of just natural pine needles here, and I leave those in place because those actually serve a really good purpose for protecting against weeds, because you still get those perennial weeds that want to grow all throughout the fall and the winter. So that type of thing mulch is really good for. So step one, yes, it's a good idea to start cleaning up. I don't recommend that you trim a lot of your shrubs, especially things like rhodies and azaleas, as they have already started to set their buds for next spring. So wait on those types of shrubs until they're done blooming. And if you feel you need to trim them, then that is a good time to start doing it. Now, I've got hydrangeas that have turned into monsters, and I'll usually trim those back. I don't hack them all the way back to the ground. I will actually cut them back to probably the original woody stem that the hydrangeas came with. And a lot of the hydrangeas I have here will actually bloom on new growth. So you want to be sure you know the difference between the two. But a lot of the newest hydrangeas do exactly that. They'll start blooming off of new growth. So no worries that you're going to cut off next year's blooms. But double check that and make sure that those are the types of hydrangeas that you have. So when it comes to shrubs like that, evergreens like boxwoods, laurels, those are perfectly okay to start trimming now. Huckleberries, ours are all done making their berries, so we cut those back. But those are the types of cleanup things that you can start doing in your garden. Now the next step is bulbs. now is a perfect time to start putting in your spring bulbs. And a lot of folks were worried that they had already had a frost and maybe it was too late. Well, if you live in Zone 8, even Zone 7, Zone 9, as long as your ground isn't frozen, you can plant spring bulbs all the way up through the month of January. I've done it. I've completely forgotten about them in the garage, and I took them out in the middle of January and I just put them in the ground. And lo and behold, they came up. And you can actually stair-step your blooms that way too. So you can plant some of your bulbs now, you can wait until January, and then plant one more batch in February. And you'll find that next batch will actually bloom after your other ones have. So you have succession of blooms throughout your spring season without blowing it all at the same time. So yeah, bulbs, perfect time to start planting those, as well as garlic and some of your onion sets. It's a really good idea to put those in now. A lot of those bulbs need the cold in order for them to do what they're supposed to do in the spring. And they kind of sense it on their own. I've had a lot of folks worried that maybe they might come up too soon and you're getting frost and ice, and believe me, don't worry, the bulbs are tough. They'll send up some of those initial leaves, but they'll slow down if they sense some really cold temperatures, and it's not going to hurt them a bit. They're pretty darn tough. As long as they haven't sent their blooms up yet, you should be okay. Alright, the third thing that you want to do to get your gardens ready for the winter is, of course, start putting away your hoses. All your hoses, your water wands, cover your sprinkler heads as well as the spigots on the side of your home. Now's a good time to start putting in all those frost-free type of implements to save your hoses as well as your watering implements. Don't leave them outside, or you'll be very disappointed when you come out in the spring and you want to water and everything's been cracked from the freeze and the frost. Same with your tools. This is a perfect time of the year to start sharpening your tools, cleaning them up, getting everything ready and put away for the winter time. And even though I'm a little sad in the fall, I start to see things start to drop their leaves and die off, part of me is also glad. It is our time as gardeners to get a break, get a little bit of a rest, and of course start putting together our plans for the following season. So those are your three first steps that you want to take when it comes to winterizing your garden, and of course bringing in any tender plants that you know are not going to make it in your particular zone. So one question I had is fuchsia baskets, for instance. Now a lot of you should be able to overwinter your fuchsia baskets. And all I've done with mine is I'll cut them back, maybe 3 to 4 inches from the top of the soil. I get rid of all the foliage and the leaves, and I'll store them in the garage. And you just make sure they're slightly damp. You don't want to overwater them. That's all you need to do. And just check on them from time to time until the spring. And you start to see some leaves forming. That's a good time to start bringing them out when it stays 45 degrees and above. And you'll find that you have saved your fuchsia baskets. And of course feed them once you get into the spring. So give it a try. It's always worth a shot. You can also take cuttings from fuchsias and bring those inside. Things like your begonias, geraniums. I have a video from the past that you can easily look up, and I give you all the steps you can take in order to save those types of plants. So yeah, just be well aware that don't want to leave those tender plants out or you're going to regret it. Same with any types of clay pots. If you have clay pots sitting outside and it gets really cold and down below freezing, you take a chance in those cracking. Any type of pots that aren't glazed inside and out should be brought inside, or at least pushed underneath the eaves of your house so that they don't crack due to the cold. Same with your bird baths. You want to check those, and of course you want to drain them if you can. I have bird baths where the lids are separate, so I actually pour all the water out, and I'll take the lid and I'll actually just turn it upside down on its base. That's way it's not constantly filling up with water whenever we get rain or snow. So that's a neat little trick you can do. If you have a glazed bird bath, it will do just fine in the wintertime. I just flip the bowl over on top of the base, and that'll keep it from filling up with water. Same with your fountains. If you have fountains that are running, we turn the fountains off. We have actually drained a lot of our fountains at the nursery, drained all the water out, and we keep the plugs, and I actually just put them in a little Ziploc bag and I stash them where the fountain pump is located so we don't lose them. And that way, when we get rain or snow, the bowls into the fountains will not fill up with moisture, because that's usually what damages them, is if they're allowed to fill up with water. That water will expand and it will crack your fountains. Same with your bird baths. So there's another thing you can look for when you go to get your garden ready for the winter. Okay, so there's a few hints as to what you can do to start getting your garden ready for the winter. However, if you live in a warmer zone from like zone 7, 8, 9, you can still be planting in your gardens. I actually have a rhododendron that I just brought home the other day that I'm getting ready to bury. So the neatest thing about living in a little bit warmer zone from like 7 through 9, 10 is you can continue to keep planting just about through the entire year because our ground doesn't really freeze completely here. It might get cold and it might freeze the top inch, but it's not going to freeze the ground down where the roots are. So one of the best things you can start planting at this time of the year are conifers. Any of your evergreens and conifer type plants, trees, shrubs, all do exceptionally well. Things like this will do really well if you plant them in the fall. And the reason for that is you may not see a lot of growth on top. In fact, they do go dormant during the wintertime, but their roots are still extremely active. So you've got free moisture coming from Mother Nature, cooler temperatures, and they are going to get themselves established a lot faster than if you were to put them in the spring. And the neat part about that as well, planting them in the fall, is they're pretty much established by the time summer rolls around. So you don't have to baby them near as much as you do if you were to put them in the spring. And conifers, evergreens are fantastic foundation type plants. So if you're looking at a bare area, if you've just moved into a new home or you're cleaning up an area, conifers are the best way to go, as well as evergreens like rhodies, azaleas, laurels, huckleberries, anything that will keep its leaves during the winter. This is the perfect time of the year to start putting them in the ground. Also, reseeding your lawn. We're still warm enough here, even though we've had a frost or two, put your grass seed down. So if you've got bare areas, it will come up in a flash due to the nice warm soil and the constant moisture that it's going to receive. And you can probably get away with that for a little while longer, at least until about the middle of November. As well as putting a winterizer fertilizer down on your lawn so that it gets a really good start by next spring. So a few more hints as to what you can do to continue to keep gardening at this time of the year, as well as getting some cleanup accomplished at this time of the year. Okay, so hopefully I've covered just about some of the basic stuff. I'm sure you'll still have a lot of questions for me, and that's okay. You can put those in the description box down below, and I'll do my very best to get back to you. We've been extremely We've been extremely busy at the nursery as we have done our transition from fall right on into Christmas. And we're moving in from pumpkins, and then by next week we start putting up the trees, and that starts to get really exciting as well. So lots of things I want to cover with you folks over the next couple of months. One of the biggest subjects is going to be about bugs and diseases, things that you can avoid next spring. I'll be giving you some hints as to how to treat for them, how to prepare for them ahead of time so that you don't have problems with them during the spring and the summer. Lots of different things you can do just depending on what bugs and what diseases we're talking about. And I've had a lot of questions regarding that. So I'm going to start a new series over the next 3 to 4 episodes and go over some of the most common bugs and insects, as well as diseases, funguses, that you can guard against before you go back into the garden next spring. All right, you guys, I hope you're having a fabulous fall. It's still pretty decent here. We got some beautiful weather coming up this week. So good gardening weather as it's nice and cool again. And we'll definitely stay in touch. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.